You're the Pepsi generation, come and have a Pepsi day. Come on, come on, come on and taste the Pepsi way. Come on, come on, come on and have a Pepsi day. Wrap a thirsty smile around it, raise a Pepsi up and down it. Come on, come on, come on, come on, have a Pepsi day.
Why are women so happy about new Tickle antiperspirant? Is it because Tickle is the first roll-on with a big, wide ball? Is it because Tickle comes in 4 fresh fragrances? Or is it because Tickle helps keep you dry all day? Make yourself happy. Staying drier is nicer with a little Tickle.
Vroom, vroom, vroom. Today, so I have exciting story to tell about beautiful new Ford Mustang car. And inside car, boy and mother and shopping bag. And inside bag, box of post-rice crinkles. And inside box of post-rice crinkles.
Wow, Mom, boy, oh boy. There's a Mustang car inside the rice crinkles.
Oh, no, dear, the rice crinkles are inside our Mustang.
But there is a Mustang inside the rice crinkles.
Oh, there is a Mustang inside the rice crinkles.
A Mustang just like ours.
And so, sugary rice crinkles give happy ending to story. Boy get Mustang, you do too, inside post-rice crinkles. Collect them all, convertible, hardtop, and fastback. Race with your friends. You go vroom, vroom when you get Mustang car free inside post-rice crinkles.
I'll give you $50 for those sneakers. Ah! $50. Okay?
You can have them. They're
Okay.
terrible.
It's to prove a point. Now, you wash in detergent alone, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's wash this sneaker in detergent alone and this one in the same detergent plus Clorox bleach. Now, see any cleaning difference?
And the one I wash with my detergent is just 30. The one washed with Clorox looks so clean.
Clorox Clean. People can see the difference.
The American Eagle. Goodyear's symbol for its all-American kind of radial tire. Goodyear is committed to product innovation. We introduced rayon cord in tires. We created the polyglass tire and the polysteel radial. And now the American Eagle with belts of Flex 10 cord instead of steel. Flex 10 is made from a flexible man-made aramid fiber that's pound for pound stronger than steel.
The tire for America, the American Eagle, the tire.
When can I pick up the pictures?
Thursday.
Thursday, okay, let me make a note of that.
You gonna write it down there?
I was going to, yeah.
Well, then let's say Tuesday.
You mean 2 days earlier?
No, 5 days later.
5 days later, I thought as much.
If this customer were at a Photomat store, we'd be introducing him to our brand new picture pickup promise. Photomat's way of telling you exactly when your pictures will be ready.
That quick?
Sure, and if it doesn't work out, you get a free roll of film.
Oh, no. You get in trouble for that.
Oh, it's no problem.
Huh?
It's a Photomat policy.
The Photomat picture pickup promise.
Is there a Photomat store around here?
What's this stuff? Some cereal. It's supposed to be good for you. Did you try it? I'm not gonna try it. You try it. I'm not gonna try it. Let's get Mikey. Yeah. He won't eat it. He hates everything. He likes it. Hey, Mikey.
When you bring life home, don't tell the kids it's one of those nutritional cereals you've been trying to get them to eat. You're the only one who has to know.
It's not too sweet. It's refreshing, crisp, and neat. Canada Dry Ginger Ale. It's not too sweet. It's not too sweet. I repeat, it's not too sweet. Canada Dry cools your thirst. It's a taste that can't be beat.
It's not too sweet. It's a cold, refreshing treat. Canada Dry Ginger Ale. It's not too sweet.
Regular or diet, it's more refreshing because it's not too sweet.
I found a recipe you won't find in a cookbook, but it's sure nutritious and a real money saver, too. Take a quart of Carnation Instant Non-Fat Dry Milk. Add a quart of whole milk. Mix, chill, and serve. You get 2 quarts of fresh-tasting, low-fat milk and make a real savings on your milk bill. Carnation Instant Milk. Good for you and your budget, too.
This is Robert Hedges. Stay tuned for the second half of the Brady Bunch Hour, or the sweat hogs are gonna get you, see?
What up, cyberspace cadets, cyber fam, and fan boss galore? It's Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for Extra Credit with Miss Becca Fairley.
Hi, guys.
What's up, Miss Becca?
It is Monday.
It is, and I see everybody reacting to the commercials I put up there. Man, I love that the old Life commercial and Photomat and all that shit. Yeah, it was reality for me.
I like the older stuff because it's hilarious.
Yeah, you like the one with the woman offers the woman $50 for her tennis shoes and washes them, you know?
Yes.
I like I thought it was great. I agree. I totally agree with that shit. It's good stuff. And we're saying hey to people in the chat. Duck Dog, greetings, Spittle Buggies, Modus Operandi. I saw Undead Ramen. I salute you. Joshua Damaris, greetings. Uzi Q, my favorite snack. And let's see. Am I missing anybody? If I'm missing, I'm sorry. But hey, all right, everybody's welcome. Sit down. We're going to talk about Chinese communism and how it's like affecting us currently, today, as in like now. We've been looking at a lot of stuff from the past and learning about communism.
Indeed.
How it's like a one-trick pony, or as the president, the soon-to-be president says, a one-horse pony, or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
One-trick pony.
Yeah, one-trick pony. One horse pony. But okay, yeah. He said that, you know. All right, so we saw a tweet today that President Xi said that he expects the relations with the United States to normalize once President Biden is in office, and things are just going back to normal because they've definitely been disrupted.
They definitely have.
And then this came out, says leaders of both U.S. political parties and across the U.S. government have perplexed and stunned that the EU is moving towards a new investment treaty right now on the eve of a new U.S. administration, and they're making that investment treaty with China. Notice, we got G, we got Merkel, and we got this dude, I don't know who the fuck he is, and I don't know who the fuck she is. So, but yeah, they're obviously filleting the Xi dynasty, and that's the way it is. And people were asking me about Mitch McConnell and why, you know, his behavior seems to have betrayed his party, and you know, and here's why. McConnell's wife is this lady right here, and I'm not being a racist, but her parents, her dad owns a shipping company out of the mainland China, and she's been married to Mitch, and she was also part of Trump's cabinet at one point. So,
was she?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah, this is it's in Slate magazine. They've got that earmarked. All the shit that they had stacked up against Trump is in one section now. You can I don't know what they're going to do with it once if he's out of office.
I say they're going to use it for the next year or so to blame everything that Biden and Harris can't accomplish on him. And then after that, they'll probably just attack the GOP like they usually do.
Or they'll do it to justify all of Biden's gaffes, and then they'll secretly be saying this is a good reason that we need to get rid of this guy, and then they'll boot him, and it'll be President Kamala Harris.
Yeah, but they'll do it in like the softest of ways because they can't give Biden bad press because that reflects horribly on Harris. Indeed. And they don't want to damage her.
I totally agree. And Taiwan is number one forever. I'm just saying.
Indeed.
Right? So, all right, we're going to go ahead and move them. We've got a series of videos. This is going to look a little bit more like the Cream Stream tonight, just because I've got a bunch of modern stuff. We're not going to be looking at old stuff. We'll probably, pick that back up, sooner or later. But I want to look at, in the future, Venezuela and North Korea, kind of get, and maybe even, now that I'm thinking about Cuba, of course. So we definitely want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and get the Australian, this is Australian, Sky News Australia. And at night, they seem to be really, it's really probably the best news station I've seen.
That's what I hear too.
Yeah, it's professional and everything. Newsmax is okay and OAN is okay, but their production and Right Side News, all their production needs to increase. These guys are the real deal. So here we go.
Really trying to reset this increasingly hostile relationship between Canberra and Beijing. The Prime Minister told a UK think tank overnight that the rise of China should not mean that we return to Cold War era divisions. He says that liberal democracies like Australia and the UK will have to work together to maintain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific as regional tensions rise. He also stressed that Australia won't be picking sides between the US and China and says that ties with Beijing are being needlessly damaged by this false perception that Australia is siding with America.
Our actions are wrongly seen and interpreted by some only through the lens of the strategic competition between China and the United States. It's as if Australia does not have its own unique interests or its own views as an independent sovereign state.
All right, in Australia, the Labor Party is the center-right party. So, not Labor, the Liberal Party, my bad. They call it the Liberal Party, and then it's the exact opposite of what we call liberal here. So
this is just false, and worse, it needlessly deteriorates relationships. If we are to avoid a new era of polarisation, then in the decades ahead there must be more nuanced appreciation of individual states' interests in how they deal with the major powers. Stark choices are in no one's interests.
So, Laura, these comments were made in a speech to the British Policy Exchange after Scott Morrison was awarded the inaugural Grotius Prize recognising global leadership. The PM also spoke about Australia's commitment to net zero emissions, although still focusing on the road there rather than setting targets.
We're also pleased to partner with the United Kingdom on our shared task to create a pathway to net zero emissions driven by practical, scalable and commercially viable technologies, not economy-destroying taxes. Boris and I share an ambition to chart a course on emissions reduction consistent with our values and priorities as leaders of governments from liberal conservative traditions.
And the PM also spoke about COVID-19, the pandemic, as being an economic meteor, but says, generally speaking, the policy settings in the global economy are right. Laura?
结果没想到中国要在2027年超过美国了。2027年，原来说是可能。
Okay, now this is Chinese sociologist Dr. Li Yi, as you can read, and I'm going to back it up so you can read exactly what he said. All right, it was said that that this might be. Oh shit. Yeah. It turns out that China is going to overtake the United States in 2027.
没想到中国要在2027年超过美国了。2027年，原来说是可能还要缓个1-2年，结果这今年这个上帝搞了个小阴谋，是吧？上帝给这个搞出来一个新冠，叫世界各国。
God created the COVID-19 pandemic to spread it around the world. To help China.
Divine intervention? Is that really what they're going to put it on?
Well, I mean, they're communists, man, and they're supposed to be atheistic. This is almost, I don't know, man. I don't know how he can get away with saying that shit.
No, 搞一搞这个新冠，这么一折腾新冠，结果对世界各国出了个考题，等于是，结果这个考题是个偏心的考题。这个新冠啊，这个东西啊，它是最不利于欧美的，最有利于朝鲜和中国的。所以全球抗疫，朝鲜第一，中国第二。朝鲜是个零嘛，是吧？朝鲜是零感染，所以这个体制啊，它可以做到。我们这个体制也好，但是比朝鲜还差一点，还不如朝鲜。所以咱还死了4000人，是吧
？Yeah, you know why? You know what North Korea does? If you're positive, you get a bullet and you get thrown in a pit and set on fire.
Right, they don't keep track. Why would they keep track? That looks bad.
Yeah, man, and these numbers, of course, it's like we know that China's been totally up and up with that, you know, all the deaths and stuff, you know, in the reporting.
但是你死4000人和美国死22万人比，你等于一个人都没死嘛，对吧？咱们等于差不多也是接近零感染，接近零死亡，14亿人死了4000人，那根本就等于没人得病，没人死嘛。中国经济，全球经济，中国现在一枝独秀。中国超过美国时间提前了，2027年没有问题，美国活不成了。
You hear that? The United States will not survive. That's their goal.
That has been their plan all along.
All along, yes, is that they want to be the global superpower. They want to be the global arbiter. They want to be. They want to run the planet. You know, and it's going to be funny, man, when all these green, the global warming people and stuff. You know, if this happens, the first thing they're going to do is like all the alphabet people are going to be shot. You know, it's everything that checks off on the liberal agenda will be the first shit to go.
Yep. That's what I've been telling people.
在2012年
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say it again.
I've been telling people that on social media because, you know, that's where I like to troll. And they're always telling me that I'm a racist and xenophobe and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? You'll get the bullet first, and I may be in that same line as you, but I'll get to watch you go first, and I'll be sure to point and laugh.
Well, you know, sticking to your guns is something I think that is respected. Yeah, so you know, at least we'll hang out in the gulag and starve to death together. With our friends. That's right, our friendly friends, our forever friends. Yes, right. Man, it's just like I can't. I'm so fucking livid at this stuff. It drives me crazy. But when I hear this guy just, you know, smugly say this stuff, like. He's turned on by the idea. That's right. God smiled upon China and gave us that COVID.
我们已经在台海取得了对美日，在台海不是在世界，我们在渤海、黄海、台海，我们对美军形成了绝对优势，而且我们的扩军的速度是人类历史上所从未有过的。
So. Did you catch that? All right. It looks like they're targeting Taiwan. And it says we've been launching fleets equivalent to the French Navy every year for several years. Their Navy... Yeah, go ahead.
What's funny about that is when Hong Kong was hot, my husband said, that's a distraction. It's Taiwan we need to worry about. Hong Kong is the distraction.
Yeah, because they were going to, they just did it like, what, 27 years sooner than they were supposed to, because, they can't stick to their word or any of the treaties they sign with anybody. So, yeah. And the deal is that they've got a very apt Navy, but their submarines are that's where we outclass them.
Yes.
I mean, it's not even funny. And we've got these new littoral vessels that we're rolling out of Alabama, out of Mobile Bay, and so I don't know. It's interesting to see, because the people, it seems to me, the people, and you're going to hear this, they're talking about the United States and China having some type of military thing, conflagration at some point in the near future. And
so is that kind of like what's going on between China and Canada right now?
Well, they're in Canada, on our border, doing drills with Canada, because they're besties.
They are.
They are besties, and little Fidel, he just loves G. So
yes, he does.
He wants to smell his finger. So, all right, we're gonna keep rolling. Man, this dude just makes me hot under the collar.
我们已经连续好几年，每年下水一个法国海军，1年一个法国海军吨位。
Yeah, the French are known for their navy. I'm just whenever I see that, I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about?
我们还要继续每年一个法国海军至少再下10年。只要14亿中国人民每天吃饭、睡觉、拉屎、尿尿，只要我们每天上班，我们就把美国逼死了。这个从怎么讲，中国的发展都是不可抗拒、不可停止，除非只要一个事情不出，只要中国不出一个戈尔巴乔夫，不把中国自己内部搞乱，不搞得自己分崩离析，中国的发展就不可抗拒。
The world exclusive.
So yeah, he was saying as long as China doesn't produce a Gorbachev, which is, I guess they're blaming the fall of the Soviet Union on Gorbachev and Glasnost and all that. I that place was ready to collapse. We outspent them on military shit. That's what happened. Their economy collapsed from within, and that's how the Soviet Union fell. And when that happened, China just picked up right where they left off, and we didn't see that coming. That's on the United States, and a certain Billy Jeff, Mr. President's gonna love everybody, but man, them Chinese, don't worry about them. They fucking eat, man. They eat each other, for fuck's sake. God Almighty.
They're not a threat to us at all.
Not at all. No, as a matter of fact, we'll sell them guidance system for a missile. How about that?
The first ever leak of a Communist Party database out of China. All
right, now this happened like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Nobody's talking about this in the United States, but there's this huge leak of Chinese spies all over the world. Check out how many.
Shanghai. It has the personal details of more than 1.95 million members who are now, many of them, all around the world. Joining me now to discuss this is cybersecurity expert Robert Potter, the co-founder of Internet 2.0 and the man who verified this data. Robert, thank you for your time this evening.
And I'm just going to let this dude speak because he's very eloquent in how he presents the information. So I'm going to shut up for a while.
Thanks for having me, Shara. It's always good to be here.
Now, firstly, why is a leak of Communist Party members actually significant?
Well, it's really interesting because it gives us an unprecedented view into the structure and method of operations of the Chinese Communist Party. It's not something that's easily seen. It's not something that becomes available every day. It shows how the party has increasingly taken on a global view, the way that it interacts with foreign companies, the way that it seeks to influence and engage in operations abroad. And you see that structure again and again, when you evaluate this information, you can see the global nature of the Chinese Communist Party. And you can also see just how diverse it is. I mean, there are people in there who are billionaires, there are people in there who are ideologues. It's an incredibly diverse crew of people, similarly aligned with a fairly odious racist sets of policies in places like Xinjiang and Tibet. So you get a view into the operations of an institution that you don't always get to see, and is going to be, perplexing and enticing investigation by some of the best researchers globally.
Just in terms of looking at this data and how it made its way to the public domain, you and your co-founder at Internet 2.0 and your cybersecurity analysts took a long time to get to the bottom, to track this data and verify it. How did you do that?
Well, we did it in a number of different ways. So when we originally were given a copy of the data from the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, we initially just took the version they gave us and discarded it, assuming that everything we had was incorrect. And we went through a very long process of trying to figure out where the data had originally come from, how it had entered into an online domain, and with support from the Australian, we were given access to another more comprehensive version of.
This just hit me. Maybe we ought to let him check and see if our election was on the up and up.
The data set, which then matched the IPAC data, and then using our investigative capabilities, we looked through the internet quite extensively and found that the data originally hit the internet in about 2016 through a forum that was used by activists. We then took that and looked at it in terms of how it had been used by various parties. We have people in the team who are, former intelligence officers. We have people in the team who are specialists in China, and so they went through the process of working with activists and dissidents, people as diverse as Xinjiang province activists to Falun Gong, to people who are as part of the pro-democracy movement in China and in Hong Kong, had been using this database for the purposes of counterintelligence. They've been using it to keep an eye on people who are showing up to their meetings. And because the data has information around ethnicity, it was then given to journalists for the purposes of trying to verify the contact details and the true identities of individuals. So a process was undertaken in conjunction with the consortium to go through and work out precisely what we were looking at in terms of its accuracy. So people who were on the list of mobile phone numbers were contacted by journalists. Those identities were proven to be true, and then we were matched it to common situations that we saw in Australia, where people who had left Australia, we saw people who had been involved in scandals, had their names in this system, and so we concluded with high confidence that the version that we were given by IPAC was the original version that was leaked to the internet by the activists.
Yeah, an extremely thorough process, and very impressive to have watched you do that, from start to finish. Now, obviously, people who are reading the story tomorrow are going to make the point that not all Communist Party members are spies or are of concern, but they do, of course, sign up to the party's ideology, racist ideology, and there are serious human rights violations occurring in the name of the party. What do you think that companies and government agencies need to be aware of here? What are the risks that intelligence experts have warned about?
Yeah, and I think we just want to bookend this by first saying that this is by no means an invitation for increased suspicion of Chinese Australians or Chinese people anywhere. This is one of the reasons, we'll get to this in a moment, that we're not interested in releasing the full list publicly, although it may find its way out there through other people who have access to it, may data dump it, but we certainly won't. But it's worth saying that communism is something that we sometimes struggle to understand in Australia, because we encounter it through socialism, we encounter it through campuses, and this is rather different to even the original definition of communism. I don't think the people on this list would get along with Karl Marx any more than they would get along with Mao. That being said, every person that signs up to that ideology is in favour of the colonisation of Xinjiang province and of Tibet. It is in favour of what is going on in Hong Kong. They're in favour of what's going on in Hong Kong right now. They're in favour of the things that are being done in the name of the Communist Party, and these things are abhorrent. And that's why we decided that it was in the public interest to support the release of this story. There is going to be a lot of discussion that flows out of this, where people are going to interpret, people are going to have views, some will downplay it, and some will say, oh, just joined it for the purposes of advancing one's career. But then ask, what does that mean for one's character? to advance one's career over the backs of the people of Xinjiang province, over the backs of people who have their organs harvested? What is the trade-off involved in that, and how comfortable are we with people making that trade-off? And then you see from this the global reach of this capability. You see the sheer global scale of the Chinese Communist Party and its ambitions. Now, we're not for McCarthyism. We're not for just, treating all of these people with incredible degrees of suspicion. But it does give us insight into how a rising power on planet Earth is seeking to exercise its power globally, and the degree to which it influences and permeates all degrees of Chinese society, whether it be from the finance markets in Shanghai or to the tech areas in the southern areas of China. All of this taken together shows a party of incredible ambition that seeks to play a role in every part of Chinese society.
And we've had the warnings from intelligence agencies about just how much that is, trying to encroach on Western life, on economies, on our security agencies, politics and businesses as well. Robert Potter, thank you very much for your time. Really enjoyed working with you over the past couple of months, and you've written a terrific piece on all of this in The Australian tomorrow, so look forward to reading it there.
Thank you very much for having me, Shari.
And I think it's worth pointing out, just reinforcing that point that Robert Potter just made, that this is not WikiLeaks. This is not going to be a data dump online of 2 million people. We're not exposing online 2 million people who have joined the Communist Party. We could do that. We're not doing that. We have investigated it along with a small group of journalists around the world, four media outlets in total. We've treated it responsibly, and you can read the full story in The Australian tomorrow.
Let's bring in our political...
So, and I'm sure they're part of the Five Eyes network, which is the United States, and then Britain, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, I think, and what's the other British? Anyway, so that I'm sure they shared that information, like the CIA is going to do anything with it.
Letter to Andrew Clennell now. This WTO, Andrew, this action at the World Trade Organization, you flagged it a few weeks ago that it was coming, and it's likely to take some time, isn't it?
Well, a couple of years. I mean, we've taken India over sugar to the WTO. That's been in the WTO for a couple of years. So what material effect this will have, I suspect it will have very little. And it's not another day we've come out with a press conference with a tactic of megaphone diplomacy against China, and I just wonder when the government will realise that's not the way to go with this country. That's my personal view anyway, that you've got to go soft diplomacy route, stand up for yourself where you absolutely have to, but otherwise, basically, as one government minister said to me a couple of months ago, can't we just shut up about China? Now, you say that to senior people in government, they say, well, we keep getting asked about it, but you can give short answers. They do on other issues. And the number of press conferences we've had directly or indirectly attacking China this year have been, I would say unprecedented. I know this started under Malcolm Turnbull. I think everyone knows what Australia's views are on various issues in relation to China. I don't see why we need to keep stirring the pot, if you like, when more than 40% of our exports go there.
Indeed. Andrew, well said. We'll talk to you a bit later on that issue. But
first, the Chinese government are continuing their aggressive posturing. Not content with militarising the South China Sea and placing covert Communist Party agents in businesses across the world, they're also engaged on many other fronts. We know that they've effectively declared economic war on Australia through their trade sanctions. They did the same to Canada previously, until the weak and woke Trudeau government capitulated and eventually bowed down to the Chinese dragon. We've also seen their debt trap diplomacy. That's where they lend money to third world nations for infrastructure projects. Now, these tiny countries can never really hope to repay the debt, so the Chinese reclaim the asset for their own government use. Now, that helps to explain why ports on tiny islands are being built large enough to accommodate giant Chinese Navy warships. It's going on throughout our region, but a recent development is closer to home than many people realise. The Chinese government have announced plans to build a $200 million fishery complex in an area of Papua New Guinea that has no commercial fishing grounds. Well, a fool and their money might be easily parted, you could be thinking, but the Chinese government are certainly not fools. The site of the complex is just 200 kilometres from the Australian mainland. Now, if China are true to form, they'll first build a wharf just big enough for naval vessels. It'll certainly be much bigger than that required to service the dozen or so villages who sustain themselves by fishing these non-commercial waters. And then, of course, the Chinese fishing fleet will arrive. But fishing boats have always been used by many nations to mask their surveillance activities. And a Chinese spy fleet active in the waters of the Torres Strait should concern us all. Let's remember that Australia is a major funder of Papua New Guinea. We toss in around $600 million every single year to a country renowned for corruption and misuse of public funds. Now, previously, we've turned somewhat of a blind eye to the rorting of our money in PNG because it has been key, or the location is pivotal.
Well, at least they're getting like some kind of compensation for their investment, unlike the United States. You know, I mean, you got to look at it. It's like, I don't understand why we haven't been paid back for all the fucking money. We keep throwing money at other countries. Look, man, you know, whatever.
To our national security. However, we can't afford to ignore the decision of the PNG government to take both our money and allow a declared enemy to establish a not-so-covert potential military base on our doorstep.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement is a contract, and the Chinese are in fundamental breach of that contract. Yep. We can go through 4 years of adjudication, arbitration and whatever with World Trade Organisation in order to adjudicate the matter and get it resolved. But I think Australia should just say, well, look, actually, you're in breach. We're under no obligation to provide you with any goods or services under the Free Trade Agreement. And the fact of the matter is that you need a high-grade quality iron ore, and quite frankly, we're under no obligation to provide to you any longer, and we're going to provide other countries with a high-grade iron ore under separate contracts, and that's just bad luck.
No, well, I appreciate it, Patrick. Thank you, and I look forward to the present being presented now or in the new year. Thank you very much for being so kind. I'm interested what we are missing in this man cave. There's lots of sort of secret stuff. We've got an ashtray that I wasn't allowed to promote, but I just did. Anyway. Evan, what do you think about the Free Trade Agreement and the fact that clearly China's in breach of it at the moment, and whether a breach of a Free Trade Agreement is a reason for it to be collapsed?
Well, as we're seeing with lots of both international bodies and trade agreements, China doesn't really play by the rules. It can play by its own rules and it gets away with it. But the sanctions that it's put on Australia hasn't really affected Australia. I know it's affected some producers in different industries, but Australia as a whole is sitting pretty. All this tension has meant the iron ore price has skyrocketed, and that's going to be good for government coffers. And I think what we know and what we can learn from this is that we can't really take China at its word. But we've got the ABC and the Guardian that think that China's net zero 2060 target should be taken as gospel and should be, absolutely, there must, you have to look at this for Australia to act, because look at China acting, even though under the Paris Agreement it can keep emitting for 10 years and keep building hundreds of new coal-fired power stations. So I think what we can learn from this is that we can't take China at its word at all.
Now, Linda, again, how would you deal with this? Because we understand what the consequences are, and I'm pretty sure we're not at the big red button stage yet.
The dude with the beard is named Paul Murray, and I really dig this dude. He's awesome.
He's a good guy. I love his clips.
Yeah, me too, man.
In terms of terminating the trade relationship, but I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Look, I couldn't disagree with Evan more. We're not sitting pretty. This is gutting the Hunter Valley in New South Wales. This is gutting a whole lot of primary producers, and we need to acknowledge the pain that they're going through. This is not a kind of trade war where we can just talk about strategy. We have to recognise the damage that this is doing to
but that's
people's
what China's doing
lifelines.
to us.
Well, absolutely, but Australia needs a sensible strategy to get out of this, and I don't think talking about it in a kind of high-level strategic way and not recognising that the people are suffering in Australia is a legitimate thing to do. This is hurting China. I mean, for Australia's GDP, it knocks kind of 6-7% off us. For China, it knocks about 0.5%. So that's not insignificant. If you think how many people that is in China, it's a lot of people, it's a lot of their GDP. So it's a conversation we need to have. But the first thing that needs to happen is the Prime Minister needs to get China to pick up the phone. We need to recommence a conversation with them. At the moment, you've got ministers getting up to do a press conference and saying, I've read, X or Y in the newspaper. We need to get that dialogue working again. I think that's the first and most important step.
I was interested to see New Zealand saying that they were willing to broker the beginning of conversations again.
Jacinda Ardern to the rescue. She's saving us all, Paul Murray.
I saw that crap. There's something saying in the Monthly written by Laura Tingle about this, honestly. You know they have a higher GST than Australia, right? Like, does that account? Like, do we bring that over from New Zealand
We
as
love
well?
her. She's a rock star.
Right, with a higher GST than we have here, right? No state governments. You're cool with that too?
She's brokering world agreements.
Yeah.
She's reducing
immigration.
Yeah, a limit on immigration. Yeah, this is always missing, of course, Evan. It's just about, what we can learn from New Zealand and super. And look, viewers.
Yeah, and the Prime Minister of New Zealand also just passed the most progressive abortion laws in history of mankind. You can literally kill a baby right after you give birth to it, and it's legal.
But with you,
Disgusting.
it's just the talk up of the leader,
is.
because it's all about trying to shit-can ours. Well, there we go. I have a bold prediction for you. We are about to learn that the World Trade Organization is just as compromised by China as the World Health Organization, as the United Nations, as almost every other international body. Because as we have talked about, and as you know, China is not a normal country. China has got free trade agreements with lots of countries, including our own, and you know, because you've been watching the show for a long time, I didn't like this deal even when it was first announced. Because, just like any deal that China does, they decide to renegotiate. And by that I mean ignore it. Remember the deal that was done way back when, 1997, about the future of Hong Kong? Well, that didn't even last till 2020. It is effectively back in full Chinese control, decades before that was supposed to happen. We have a, as I say, free trade agreement with China, yet for purely political reasons they've decided to go after our barley, after our coal, you name it. They have found a way to halt our produce, our wine as well. So now we're going to go off to the World Trade Organization, where China has recently become a member. They were championed into the World Trade Organization by Joe Biden. But nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. So let's run through today. Where Australia, yes, is finally going to go off and complain to the umpire, but is the umpire going to give us a fair decision, or are they going to be like every other international body which is bent over and manages the relationship with China? We'll see. Here's the Trade Minister.
This is the logical and appropriate next step for Australia to take. We have been a long-standing defender of the international rules-based system, of the importance of multilateral cooperation and engagement. And in doing so, it's appropriate that when we argue for there to be international rules and an independent international umpire to resolve disputes, that when we find ourselves in the case of having such disputes, we call in the umpire and we ask the independent umpire to adjudicate and ultimately to help to settle those disputes.
Do you trust the umpire to be truly fair and impartial? I hope so. But I think we're about to learn that it is just as compromised as the group that was supposed to investigate the pandemic. Remember the World Health Organization and their boss? Well, he had said that China deserves gratitude and respect. They were the people who ultimately are investigating China for the pandemic that got out of control. As for the Chinese and their foreign ministry, this was their response today.
The Chinese authorities have recently taken measures against some imported Australian products in accordance with law and regulations. It is in line with Chinese laws and regulations and international practices, as well as a responsible act for Chinese domestic industries and consumers. Actually, for some time, I have repeatedly heard some people from the Australian side claim to be the so-called victims, constantly accusing and attacking China by innuendo, which is completely making a countercharge confusing right and wrong. China will never accept this.
They put like a 500%, I believe, tax on their wine.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what he was talking about, their wine earlier. But, the Australian Shiraz is a big deal in the wine market. It's a big chunk of it. So
this bullshit is infuriating, but watch how this game goes. Every poll everywhere is showing that Australia fully backs the Prime Minister.
Did he just say this bullshit is infuriating?
That's what it sounded like to me, yes.
Yes, he did, man. I love this dude.
To fully backs our government and fully backs our sovereignty, to stand up for our citizens, to demand knowledge and accountability about something that has killed 800 of our own citizens and more than 1.5 million people around the world, destroying Western economies and giving people the opportunity to tell us lockdowns might still be an option till 2022, even with a vaccine. Here's the PM.
Our values will still be our values. We'll still continue to set our laws here about foreign investment and our critical infrastructure. We'll have a free press. Parliamentarians will be able to speak freely. And we want to understand how to deal with world health issues. So, they are clear positions Australia has always taken, including on human rights issues. But we want to see China do well economically. That's good for Australia. So the relationship has a big future if we can just focus on the things that benefit us both.
And will it surprise you that each way Albo is exactly on the wrong side of this? Australians know that our Prime Minister is doing the right thing. We trust that our government is doing the right thing. And we know that China is doing the wrong thing. But let's hear from the bloke who not even half of Labor supporters believe is their preferred Prime Minister.
What the Australian government needs to do going forward, though, is tell Australians what their strategy is for dealing with these issues, because Australian jobs are at stake.
They have you, Pill. They have said what their plan is. They're going to the WTO, and we'll see what the umpire does. What's your plan? Shut up, roll over, and don't offend? Because if that's the case, Australians definitely don't want you as their Prime Minister, and you will continue to lead the Labor Party into oblivion. Not even half of Labor supporters think that bloke is the preferred Prime Minister, and rightly so.
An expert team from the World Health Organization will travel to China in January as part of an investigation into the origins of COVID-19. Epidemiologists and animal health specialists are set to be deployed to Wuhan, where the pandemic is believed to have originated. There's been global calls to investigate the origin of the virus. Terms of reference have been drawn up by the WHO as well as China.
The Chinese government has gloated about the extraordinary glory of its management of the COVID-19 pandemic. Coronavirus first emerged in China's Hubei province last year before spreading to every country in the world. The nation has recorded 4 cases in the past week. Big gatherings such as sports events and fairs have been cancelled, and some venues can operate at 75% capacity. Beijing's residents are advised not to leave the city during the upcoming Lunar New Year holidays.
Wuhan was the word on everyone's lips as 2020 began. The epicentre of a mystery new illness that ran rampant, yet hospital staff were silenced for speaking out about the virus. Beijing accused of covering up the extent of the outbreak, traced back to this wildlife wet market.
It's extraordinary that the World Health Organization sees it fit for these wet markets to continue in China. They shouldn't.
In April, amid a nationwide lockdown, Australia went out on a limb demanding an independent international inquiry into the origins of COVID-19.
Well, we need to know the sorts of details that an independent review would identify for us.
The Chinese government was predictably incensed, hitting back with threats of a consumer boycott.
Why should we drink Australian wine, eat Australian beef?
But Australia not backing down.
We will, of course, continue to support moves to ensure there's a proper independent assessment.
The Foreign Minister vindicated a month later, the World Health Assembly passing a motion calling for a comprehensive and impartial investigation into how the pandemic began.
And the resolution is therefore adopted.
But Australian farmers and producers weren't celebrating as China followed through on its trade threat, suspending beef imports from 4 abattoirs in May. The list of exports in the firing line has continued to grow. Wine, seafood, timber and lamb all caught in the crosshairs of the worsening relationship between Canberra and Beijing that deteriorated further when the government unveiled new foreign investment laws, giving the Treasurer the power to force divestment on national security grounds.
Today's reforms to our foreign investment framework are the most significant since the establishment of the Act in 1975.
Tougher legislation targeting China would follow, giving the Foreign Minister the power to cancel any deals struck between state governments and foreign powers. Victoria's involvement in China's Belt and Road Initiative expected to fall foul. Is Victoria's Belt and Road Initiative deal about to be torn up?
This is part of doing a stocktake.
Where any foreign government seeks to undermine the sovereignty of Australia's foreign policy by seeking to do deals with subnational governments, Australia needs to protect itself from that.
Well, if the Prime Minister's got time to be doing those things, then that's fine for him. I don't.
In another sign of deteriorating ties, the last 2 Australian journalists working in China were forced onto emergency evacuation flights home after a 5-day diplomatic standoff. ABC reporter Bill Birtles and the Financial Review's Michael Smith had been questioned about Chang Lei, a Chinese-Australian journalist working for CGTN who was detained a week earlier on so-called national security grounds.
DFAT made the initial warnings to my employers and to ourselves last Monday that we should consider leaving China.
If the fractured relationship wasn't already clear, the Chinese embassy here in Canberra gave its bluntest assessment in November, leaking this dossier of 14 grievances in a deliberate ploy to pressure the Morrison government into reversing key policies. On the list, foreign interference laws banning Huawei from the rollout of the 5G network, calling for an inquiry into COVID-19 and speaking out about human rights abuses in Xinjiang and Hong Kong.
Our sovereignty is not up for trade.
Just a week later, Scott Morrison fronted the cameras to demand an apology over an inflammatory tweet by a Chinese government official.
Yeah, man, and we really didn't talk about that, Becca, but yeah, they had that picture of a, and the Chinese put this out. It was an Australian soldier killing a lamb.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see if I can back it up just a second, because they had it unblurred for just a moment. I don't know.
Uses in Xinjiang and Hong Kong.
Our sovereignty is not up for trade.
Just a week later.
There it is. And it's like he's like, it looks like this blood right there, like he's been killing them or something. And it was really outrageous to the Middle East people. I don't know why, but it was a big deal.
It was a total setup.
Yeah, it was fake. It's fake as fuck. It was fake, mate.
Later, Scott Morrison fronted the cameras to demand an apology over an inflammatory tweet by a Chinese government official. The fake.
What'd it say?
I said they love to manipulate.
Exactly.
Image showing
And
an
say they
Australian
don't.
soldier holding a bloodied knife to the throat of an Afghan child, a reference to the Brereton War Crimes Inquiry.
It is deeply offensive.
The trade spat between Canberra and Beijing escalated again in December when Chinese state media reported China was restricting only Australian coal imports.
If that were the case, then that would obviously be in breach of WTO rules.
Australia has been consistent in our approach to our values, our principles, and protecting our national interest. It is not we who have changed.
Finishing the year by launching a formal appeal to the World Trade Organization against tariffs on Australian barley, recognising any resolution could take years, but insisting it's the right path.
This is the logical and appropriate next step for Australia to take.
As Minister Birmingham handed the reins of the vexed trade portfolio to Dan Tehan, there is renewed hope of restarting dialogue. But Australia heads into 2021 no closer to rescuing the rocky relationship. Eliza Edwards, Sky News, Canberra.
But first, most of us have been drowning in news about coronavirus for all of 2020. Occasionally China makes headlines, and when it does, it's only over bans of Australian export products. For far...
I know. Uzi assures me that this is a woman. I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know. Maybe some Australian in the chat might be able to tell us a little bit more about this person, but I don't know.
Too many Australians, we continue to frame this relationship with China as a juggling act between our economic interests on one hand.
I haven't manipulated the sound at all. This is not even sped up. So,
and our alliance commitments with the United States on the other. John Howard expressed it very well in a much more benign era that Australia does not need to choose between our history or our geography. But that choice has been extinguished by China's increasingly aggressive behaviour. Many in the local China lobby blame Australia for the current crisis in our relations, but that ignores the growing pushback from the EU and many ASEAN states against China's quite naked ambitions. Today, we learned that Australian wheat is the latest industry to be buffeted, with imports to China down to near decade lows amid ongoing trade tensions. To discuss this and Australia's broader national security interest, I'm joined by a man who has served Australia with courage and distinction on the battlefield and is now a Senator for New South Wales. Jim Molan, a very familiar contributor on Sky News. Well, Jim, you've used some quite ominous language about a likelihood of a war between the United States and China because of China's increasingly aggressive behaviour both in the South China Sea and towards Taiwan. Do you want to expand a little on what you've had to say on the record today?
Catherine, good evening. Yes, I've spoken about this for some reason, and maybe it's associated with the grey zone conflict that we're in at the moment. But there's been a lot of attention to it in this kind of between Christmas and New Year. Yeah. Maybe it's because there's nothing else to talk about, but I reckon there's a lot to talk about. Yeah. What I've said is that war between the United States and China is not just possible, it's more likely than most people are prepared to estimate. And by not talking about it, by not admitting the possibility of it, we increase the risk of it occurring. Now, I've never maintained that war is inevitable between the United States and China. And if we add in the idea of alliances into that, see, I cannot imagine a war where China attacks Australia. But what I can imagine, and there's 1,000 reasons for it, what I can imagine is a war between the United States and China, which we in Australia can't deter. What we've got to be able to do is deter collateral attacks on this nation out of a war between those two nations.
And indeed, Jim, we've discussed this over the course of the year, haven't we? That I think a lot of Australians would probably be surprised. I see many in the strategic community, even Paul Dibb and Hugh White, saying that there's still a choice were Taiwan to be invaded. But my assessment would be that it is impossible for the PLA to leave Australia unimpeded on the table while we host that enormous and seamlessly integrated US ground station network through our outback and some other facilities which we won't go into in detail, but we're integrated into the US space warfighting system, are we not? And so any operation against Taiwan would involve at least blinding Australia, and that would entail, if not kinetic force, some kind of electromagnetic attack on us, surely.
And we're getting the kind of cyber attack that you're implying every day of the week.
Yeah.
And I think that we are probably maintaining a defence against that relatively well, and the government's put an awful lot of money into exactly that. But I think that there are any ways that such a war might start. Taiwan is the flavour of the month, really. A lot of people are talking about that. But Taiwan, in my view, a Chinese attack to recover Taiwan as its own province is something that you can't just put in a square and say, well, this is between China and Taiwan.
Absolutely.
That this has global implications.
Yeah.
If, for example, the Chinese decide to act on Taiwan and America doesn't act, then no one in Southeast Asia is going to take America seriously ever again. 25 million people who stand standing in contradistinction between an authoritarian China and a democratic China.
Did you hear what he just said? That if we count out to China, nobody will ever take us seriously ever again.
It's true, and they shouldn't.
Well, and this follows up with Obama's policy, man. The humbling of the United States as a superpower. Because we're evil and...
Sorry.
Go ahead. Imperialists.
Do you suppose that as soon as Biden gets into the glorious White House, that he will do an apology tour 2.0 and start going to all these countries and apologizing on behalf of us because we allowed the Orange Man bad to do what was right.
He'll do it
in our interest.
He'll do it through Zoom. Yeah, he'll do a bunch of Zoom calls. I guarantee, man. All right. So you take the bet that he's actually going to go there, and I'm going to bet he does the Zoom thing. Okay.
Okay.
And we're both agreeing that he's probably going to do that. All right. It's amazing. Yes. This shit's amazing. Oh my God. Anyway,
society, fabulously wealthy and successful, that we've let go back. It was bad enough.
Why did I quit drinking?
And the question then becomes, if America has to act, what does Australia do?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there are contingency plans somewhere in the organisation for these. I think the challenge is much, much bigger. If, of course, Taiwan is going to be aggressively attacked by the Chinese, then they've somehow got to handle the nuclear submarines, American nuclear subs, which sit in the area. They've somehow got to manage crossing 100 kilometres of strait by sea or by air. They've got to somehow manage the American facilities on Guam and in Japan, and maybe even in Darwin. This is why I say you can't just look at Taiwan as a separate and neat construct, which something happens there and it doesn't happen everywhere.
Precisely.
This will happen all over the world. What would Iran say if America was tied down in the South China Sea? What would the Russians do in the Baltic if America was tied down in the South China Sea? And God knows what North Korea would do.
And of course, you've got the situation where the Chinese do have vulnerabilities, don't they? In that they still are more reliant on Middle Eastern oil than they would like to be. And the United States Fifth Fleet has the capacity to choke them through the Straits of Hormuz and those traffic points at least. But they've reserved the right, for example, to attack US carrier groups on the northern side of Hokkaido. So as you say, any move on Taiwan would involve preliminary operations against other democratic states.
I think it's got to, at least. If sea is going to be used in the invasion of Taiwan, then there are sea mines to be cleared. And 1,000 other things that they've got to do before they do it. But I think we've got to overstate the dependence on Middle East oil, because now with pipelines from Russia, pipelines from the stands, and the reserves that I can only assume China would build up before doing anything, that may not be an initial problem. But I guess what you're implying is that there's maybe a role for us in blocking the straits through the Indonesian archipelago.
Absolutely.
Of course, then we're into a bigger war.
Absolutely.
This is why I always say you can't just say that something between China and Taiwan is a nice, neat little package, that they'll do it or they won't do it. We've got a choice to engage or not engage. The Americans will engage or not engage. This has got potential to be enormous.
And this kind of rerun of some form of appeasement is probably what prompted the Prime Minister when he launched that, what I thought was a very good strategic update on 1 July at ADFA, that enhanced our sensor strike linkages out into the maritime zone beyond Northern Australia. I thought that was an exceptional package and a good update. He referred quite intentionally, saying that there are some echoes of the 1930s. So
I need to acknowledge that Ron Hitler Barassi says it's a man who used to have high-ranking position in the Army. So I don't know if that's the truth, but I buy that. I'll buy that for $1.
You're not alone in this, but I might add, the Minister for Defence did have something to say about this today, which is slightly at odds with you, and I'd like to just get your comment on your colleague, Linda Reynolds, who spoke earlier today.
Jim Molan, Senator Molan, has extensive experience. He's one of our most capable and experienced Army officers, and also now as a Senator. And his opinions are his own, but I would refer you back to the Defence Strategic Update, where we have a very clear-eyed view of what is happening regionally and globally, and we are preparing our nation accordingly.
That's very, very good, and I have great respect for the Minister for Defence.
So you're not in the naughty corner?
I hope not. I have been in the naughty corner. But I thought the Prime Minister's speech in launching the strategic update was fabulous.
And the Minister was there also.
The Minister was there, and I have the greatest respect for anyone who can get $270 billion, even if it does go over 10 years out of the Expenditure Review Committee.
Absolutely.
At this time in our history has done well, and that's to Linda's credit.
Absolutely.
But my fear is that with the fabulous speech the Prime Minister has given, I'm not too sure, I can't see where the consequences of that are flowing down into government and into the nation. And I make the point that if we spend $270 billion on the Australian Defence Force, and I believe that right now the Australian Defence Force is better than it's been for 75 years, but it's better than it's been for decades for the wars we used to fight, not for what we face in the future. I would make the statement that if we spend this $270 billion over 10 years, and anyone who thinks we've got 10 years, give me a call, I've got a bridge I want to sell them.
Yeah.
But at the end of that 10 years, I'd suggest that we would have an ADF, which is far better than it is now, no two ways about it. It could probably win 1 or 2 significant battles. Can it win a campaign? Has it got lethality, mass, and sustainability for a campaign or a war? That's the question that the government's got to address. But also, what about the rest of the nation? If we're getting $270 billion, Catherine, to the Defence Force for something in the future, what are we doing for the rest of the nation?
And that brings in an important point I want to come to, because both he and Minister Reynolds, and like you, I thought the package had a lot to like.
It was excellent.
But the Prime Minister was at some pains again in that speech that warrants close reading to say that we no longer have that luxury of lead time. You remember the warning time concept that was part of the DOA Defence of Australia construct. That's off the table in the eyes of the PM. So you're more, not alarmist, but you're sense that there could be a higher likelihood of conflict than less so is certainly the Prime Minister's position. It's certainly underpinning that package. What I'm worried about is that our lead times have been taken off as a strategic guidance initiative, but they're still impacting on our procurement programs.
Right.
And I'm concerned. I want to run a couple things past you. We declared operational capability with 20 of the JSF yesterday. Great news. However, its range is limited, be expanded by the hitting power with hypersonic missiles, but the tankers aren't a stealth platform.
Warning and control aircraft.
Same thing. So are we doing enough? Like in terms of that compressed lack of warning, a package that will take some time to implement, what are your rub points? What are you most worried about in terms of particular platforms, availability? What would you do to grip this up and get a more whole-of-government response? Have you got a plan that you'd like to outline to us tonight?
The plan that I have is that too quickly we go to the tactical level.
Yep.
Too quickly we say, do we need 12 submarines? Do we need 72 or whatever it is, F-35s? Do we need 3 big ships, etc., etc.? That ain't the point. The point is we could have the answer to every one of those questions if we had an overarching strategy. And we can pour money into defence, and thank God that this government has put the $270 billion in. It's fabulous and I support it entirely. But it doesn't solve the national security problem. What solves the national security problem is an overall strategy that addresses not just defence, it addresses foreign affairs, cyber, education, every aspect of this nation. Because if we think that the Defence Force needs $270 billion to fight whatever it is we think is coming down the track towards us, what about everyone else? This is the question that I think I will encourage government to look at every possible chance that I get. If we start with the strategy, then all the things fall out the bottom. Because if you do the strategy, you say, well, what are the threats? See, I don't say that we need to spend one more cent on defence, not 1 cent. What I do say, though, is if we go through the strategy and we start with who we're likely, the kind of wars that we're likely to fight, if we start with those, at least then we understand the risk of not spending more money on defence.
Quite.
Now, once government gets their ideas set down, and I believe this is where the problem is, we don't say what we foresee the future as being. You've got to say that rather than just letting defence go and do what they want to do. And I think this is the challenge.
And so if I'm reading between the lines, it sounds like you're arguing for a whole of government national security strategy across the board rather than strategic updates.
Correct.
And you raised a good point, Jim. This grey zone warfare, people probably like to hear more from you on that because you're quite right. It's just as likely our banking system could be attacked, isn't it, as much as our defence infrastructure. And if we haven't got the cyber specialists defending our banking system, or if we've got reservists who are in the banking system and maybe better used there rather than working for ASD as reservists, we've got rub points. Now, that's the type of whole of government seamless joining up that you're talking about, isn't it?
It is. And what's caused me to take this line more enthusiastically than I have over the last 3 years is the fact that the 4 nations of China, Iran, Russia and North Korea, and of course Islamic extremism, their power has increased, US power has decreased, and we are now becoming very aware of this nation's vulnerabilities. And this is what you're getting at. We, as a government, we take one problem and we solve it brilliantly. And if I look at counter-terrorism, foreign influence, foreign affairs, BMI, all of these good things that we have addressed as a government, we're doing very, very well. But I don't think, when I look at the Prime Minister's speech and I say, OK, that's what the man has said, it is brilliant stuff, what does it mean in reality? I don't see that next level down.
Now, is that a problem with the Defence Department and the bureaucracy? Like, the elected officials have set some terrific yardsticks there, but it really does need a shake-up, doesn't it? We've been, the whole time you and I have been in service, which now spans nigh on 50 years, sadly. Can you remember how many bad procurement decisions we've lived with? And they all look crazy with hindsight.
Oh, absolutely. And every time we have a bad decision, or every 3 or 4 or 5 years, we have another investigation.
Correct.
We have an inquiry, and where does it stop? It stops at that level below government. Now, my view is that if government can get their part right, then you eliminate a vast number of the problems down below, because the procurement organisation, at the moment we have a procurement organisation which tries to eradicate risk with pass after pass, with a government intervention, and at the end of it we still shake our heads and say, why are we doing this? And that's the question we've got to answer. If we can answer that question, and this is the emphasis that I'm putting on internally within government, we've got to be able to answer that question. What is it that we are preparing, not the ADF, but the nation for going into the future?
And look, all of this, Jim, if plans go ahead and I get the show that we're talking about next year on a Friday night, I'll dedicate an entire show to having this chat, because our audience can't get enough of national security and the China threat. They get it, they understand it. But on a more sombre note, you attended the funeral service today for a former Governor-General, a mutual friend and a great Australian, Mike Jeffrey, MC, a fine soldier. What are your memories of Mike? You had more direct service with him. I was only a kid when he was COSASR. But
yes, and I got to know him when he was a brigade and a divisional commander, then when he was the Governor-General. And of course, Mike was an extraordinary man, and one of the most pronounced things that I walked away from the state funeral that we gave today, we had the Governor-General there, and we had the CDF and the Prime Minister.
For a potential modern-day war.
But I would refer you back to the Defence Strategic Update, where we have a very clear-eyed view of what is happening regionally and globally, and we are preparing our nation accordingly.
Those preparations include a nearly $24 million upgrade to sonar systems on Collins-class submarines. Western Australia has campaigned to secure the full-cycle docking contract, which would add more than $8 million to the local economy. But Linda Reynolds isn't making any promises. The Senator calling on WA to improve shipbuilding facilities at Henderson instead.
Instead of wasting taxpayers' money on ads, on a program that may come here in 5 or 6 years, but focus on the here and now.
Emily Evans, Sky News.
The recent release by CNN that suggests up to 500,000 residents in Wuhan may have been infected with coronavirus. Again, 10 times the official statistic. But none of this, I guess, should come as a great surprise to anyone. The Communist Party in China aren't really known for their ready embrace of the truth. Speaking of China, make no mistake, they will remain Australia's greatest challenge into the new year. In the past 24 hours, Chinese authorities have added Australian wheat to their hit list, slashing imports to a near-decade low. Thankfully, China accounts for only 10% of our wheat export market. But any reduction only amplifies the message of displeasure being sent from Beijing. Another chapter to follow barley and beef, timber, wine, seafood and coal. Put simply, when your largest trading partner becomes your main strategic threat, you know you're in strife. And that's precisely where Australia finds itself as the year comes to a close. For too long, we've bet it all on red on the roulette wheel of trade. But now the croupiers roll to black. Let me be a warning to all of those at the top of politics, education and even business. The time to diversify Australia's market is now. In fact, it was probably yesterday. But we must make good on all the courageous rhetoric of late about being more self-sufficient in a post-COVID world, lest we find ourselves forced to compromise our values, alliances and sovereignty in order to just maintain our economy. To that end, the government seems in pursuit of a trade deal with India. Good on them. Something I'll speak to Matt Canavan about shortly. But with all so-called free trade deals, that old Latin phrase caveat emptor does ring true. In other words, buyer beware. We've signed a stack of FTAs over the last 2 decades, and whilst they've opened up new opportunities for farmers and, yes, some universities, they've arguably been the final nail in the coffin for much of our manufacturing sector. And believe me, we'll need what's left of it if we're to stand on our own 2 feet in the turbulent world that lies ahead.
Pandemic world. Happy New Year to you, Fareed. So great to have you here with us this morning. Look, what are you hearing from U.S. allies around the world? What do they hope when Joe Biden takes office? What do they expect? And I wonder if there's a difference.
Happy New Year, John. Pleasure to see you.
Apparently, Fareed Zakaria is the official CNN liaison to the world from the United States or something.
Bright and early in this year. What I'm hearing more than anything else is a sense of hope about the United States being back in the game, being back as an engaged power, as an agenda setter, a country that wants to try to help organize cooperative solutions around the world, get engaged with problem solving, everything from climate change to regional issues. But I think, underneath that, what I detect is a hope that the Biden administration understands this is not just a kind of restoration. You can't go back to 2008 or 9 or 2012. The world has changed a lot. I mean, one of the things I try to describe in my book is just how profoundly the world has changed. So just think about where we are with China. China is now clearly the second most important country in the world. It is, the United States and China in a league of their own. China has come out of this pandemic in many ways stronger. Yes, its reputation got battered a bit because of its early handling, but it has essentially vanquished the virus without a vaccine. It also has vaccines on board. It is moving forward with much greater confidence in the world. And a lot of countries, allies in Europe and in Asia, are wondering.
They vanquished the virus without a vaccine. Can you believe this is CNN?
Is that another divine intervention?
I don't know, man.
God has really smiled down on China.
I think somebody's blown a lot of smoke up this dude's ass. I'm just saying, man. Jesus Christ, what planet is he on?
What is the Biden administration
He's on the CCP planet.
How can it find a way to both cooperate and compete with China? That's really the big question.
And Fareed, what about the dynamic with our perceived enemies, like Iran or Russia?
I think in general, there isn't going to be as much difference as people imagine. The Biden folks are pretty tough on Russia, Iran, North Korea. The dirty little secret about the Trump administration was that while Donald Trump had clearly had a kind of soft spot for Putin, the Trump administration was pretty tough on the Russians. They armed...
Oh my God! He actually said it.
Ukraine, they armed the Poles. They extended, NATO operations and exercises in ways that even the Obama administration had not done.
Tomorrow marks the 1-year anniversary of the first public statement about a mysterious illness described by the Chinese government as a pneumonia of unknown origins. It's now known as COVID-19 and has killed 1.8 million people across the world.
And this is the best Disney has to throw at us news-wise.
But China, where the virus was first detected, now seems to be containing it rather well, with the caveat that experts question the reliability of that country's data. So we take a closer look by the numbers. China has reported a total of 95,851 coronavirus cases in a country of 1.4 billion people. In stark contrast, more than 19 million Americans have caught the virus, about 200 times China's count. 4,781, that's China's reported COVID-19 death toll, a tiny fraction of the more than 341,000 coronavirus deaths in the U.S.
Do you think that there was just a shitload that died of lead poisoning to the back of the head?
Yes, I do believe that was happening.
Yeah, I do too, man. Because we had that footage of those guys, those gun squads, man, that were walking around. And,
Yes.
it was like,
Wuhan, the first major city to experience COVID-19 and lockdown, is now back to a fairly normal life, as is most of China. China's economy has remained relatively stable, shrinking by 6.8% in the first quarter of 2020, then growing by 3.2% and another 4.9% in the following quarters. According to Chinese data, that's some question. And just today, Chinese drug maker Sinopharm announced its COVID vaccine is 79.3% effective, according to preliminary data from its final testing.
And we're going to move on up here, go back to where we started, and we're going to quit that. So I wanted to throw that little bit at y'all at the end, because they're taking China's word for it, and that terrifies me. She did say something about a caveat, but all right. So New Year's Eve, Wuhan was full at midnight.
Yes.
Whereas in New York City, we had Mayor de Blasio and his wife all by themselves, just dancing.
Oh, that clip of him dancing was awful.
I went so romantic. Come on. It was awesome.
I mean, the elites are gonna elite. But what I find fascinating is that when all this broke out, our media was like, no, China's being honest. They're giving us real numbers. Nothing to see here. And then what happened, like, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? They came out, China lied. They didn't give us all the facts on this. More developing. And now they're back to, oh, China gave us all these numbers and, you know, they didn't need a vaccine to cure anybody and we should be like China.
Amazing.
I don't know.
It's amazing.
It's so frustrating.
Well,
and the people that watch these channels, they're just sucking this up. Like, oh yes, give me more of this fear porn and the lies so that way I can go back with your talking points and put it all over social media and attack those with common sense and a way of actually critical thinking, using critical thinking when it comes to this shit.
Mm-hmm.
It is so frustrating. I'm done. Sorry.
No, it's good, man. I like it when you're on. You know, that's why I want to do this thing with you, because it's nice to see you get fired up about this stuff, because it's ridiculous.
I agree.
I mean, you know, it's like, so they don't have a. All right, so how come they're not locked down? I do see a lot of face diapers over there, right? But but they're not locked down like they were. You know, they're not being welded into their apartment buildings anymore.
Well,
anyway,
I guess lead is cheap over there. I don't know.
It's a lot. Lead is real cheap, man. You know, it is the cheapest solution to all these problems.
You know, they have a bigger population than us, and we're experiencing like an ammo shortage. I'm wondering if we just like exported all our ammo to China because they needed it more.
Maybe. Or maybe
that's just a weird theory I'm going with, because I'm frustrated. I can't find 9mm hollow points or even full metal jackets in my area, and it's very frustrating.
You know what you're talking about.
Damn it, China. Taking all the ammo.
Man, all those Chinese taking a dirt nap with all that lead in their head.
Rest in peace.
R.I.P. Yeah. Well, fam, I guess what we're... All right, so next Monday, I forgot about this, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look at my thing. Yeah. Next Monday is the national championship of football, in which the Alabama Crimson Tide are going to be playing the Ohio State Buckeyes. And yeah, it's going to be a classic matchup. So we probably won't do this next Monday. I'm going to talk to BECCA, and maybe we'll do it on Tuesday instead. I don't know. Or maybe we'll just take a week off.
I'm cool with either way. Whatever you want to do, I'm down to roll.
All right, cool deal. All right, fam. Well, that's all we got this week. You know, I hope that I really wanted, because I saw this stuff, man, and it was really fucking bothering me. And I don't think I could go to sleep with good conscience, not talking about this, not showing you all this stuff, because it's really important. And I think a lot of people are just turning a blind eye to it and hoping for the best. And these motherfuckers, they want us in the ground, man. They want their boot on our neck forever. And over and over again.
Yeah, our spineless politicians are just rolling over.
Oh,
come on in, guys.
Man,
do what you wish.
Right, give me $500 and I'll suck you. I'll fillet you all night long.
Yep.
I mean, that's basically what's going on, man. Is that they've been able to manage, to pay their way through. And these politicians, that's what the deal is. I think that everybody was so upset. It wasn't about the swamp. It was about the money. Is that the shit that Trump did helped disrupted the flow of the cash, and it pissed everybody off. And that's why you have all those rhinos flipping like that. So we'll see what happens tomorrow and the next day. It's going to be really interesting. So if you have a belief in a deity, I suggest you pray that something miraculous happens, because we fucking need it. I'm terrified, y'all. Miss Becca? Well, all right, so we usually do the shell out thing.
I have a stream tomorrow night. New time, guys. Yes, I changed my schedule again. It is what it is. I had to. Tomorrow night, 10:30 p.m. Central Standard Time will be the next episode of FERHLE'S BECCA, and then after that, it will be Wednesday, guys.
Are you sure you're just not doing this shit because when you feel like it? I'm fucking with you, man. I'm sorry.
It kind of seems like that.
I'm fucking with you.
No, the joys of having a husband that's active duty. It is. It's frustrating. I need to get the girl a vehicle, and then I can stop being a chauffeur. But until then, I guess I'll just
get her something.
People.
Find her an old fucking Honda Civic, and just say good luck later.
Well, that's the problem in our area. All the used cars are getting bought up quick. As soon as I find something that's newly listed, I'll call them, and they're like, "Oh, it's already been sold," and I'm like, "What kind of jacked up shit is this?" Or it's a complete scam.
Yeah, no, it's a bait and switch, buddy. That's
yes.
That's the old bait and switch. Well, we sold that one, but we got this one over here.
Yep.
Driven by a little old lady from Plano.
And I don't have the patience to deal with the BS games, so but I'm working on it, and until then, I guess I just changed my streaming schedule willy-nilly, guys. Keeps you on your toes.
That's right. keep your eyes peeled. So Friday we'll be doing another cream stream, and it'll probably be focusing a lot on the stuff that happens this week, because that's what it usually does. and the crew will break it down and give our brilliant analysis, our inebriated analysis, which is much needed, I think. And Saturday, accelerated deconstruction is going to happen, I think. It may be just me and Tim. I don't know. But we got to find Excel. Excel's just disappeared. I think his girl, his friend, who happens to be a girl who he's not romantically interested in, has stayed like 4 or 5 days with him now. I wonder what they're doing. Just saying.
Curious minds want to know.
We do. All right, and then next Sunday I'm going to be talking to Frosted Glass. Yep. Yeah, we're going to pull him out of the corner and we're going to put him in the chair. All right. So, and on that news, yeah, it's going to be fun. And then, like I said, it may be next Tuesday before we do this again. I don't know. I'm going to talk to Becca behind the scenes. We'll work this shit out. But we appreciate everybody for coming. I don't know about anybody in the chat, but my attention will be going to the Lords of the Night in a wee bit. I'm going to wrap up with BECCA here, and then we're going to jet. But so I'd recommend everybody go over there, and we're going to do the outie. Say outie. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see y'all later.